everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be discussing some serious things as we usually do on this channel. I actually a couple days ago was feeling under the weather and was sick when I was scrolling on Instagram and saw the story of Robert Forbes, who was unfortunately ran over and died from his injuries by an alleged white supremacist. Bakersfield Police Department chose not to move forward with charges as of today. We're seeing that there's a viral video of the Bakersfield police actually protecting the suspect, and I really wanted to lean into it and learn more about what the Bakersfield Police Department was thinking and how we move forward from here. Unfortunately, you will see in the video that I did not get the exact response that I wanted from the Bakersfield Police Department, but I did have a really fruitful conversation. So I'm so excited for y'all to see that. Please tune in and subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this. And without further ado, you're about to see me in my bonnet in all my glory, first thing in the morning, just waking up to get to this story. Thank you.
Thank you for calling the Bakersfield Police Department.
Hi, my name is Daja DuBois. I was wondering if there's any kind of directory for the chief of police. Yes. Okay, thank you. I feel like she didn't give me the right number. I'm not even going cap. I feel like she didn't give me the right number. There was something very suspicious. I don't know. Let me not. Bro, I feel like I should get dressed or something. Like, I feel like it's low-key inappropriate for me to be looking like this on camera. Yeah, okay. So for the second part of the video, I'm just gonna switch over and into some clothes. So, okay, so we're back. All right, so I'm gonna call this police chief, Clark Terry, and we're gonna see what happens. Hi, my name is Daja DuBois. I am an activist for bridging the gap between police and underrepresented communities. I've worked with Chief Jeff Tudor up in San Leandro, and I was just really wondering if I could kind of pick your brain about the recent craziness that's been happening in our country and work on, building a bond and trust between Bakersfield Police Department and their community that they serve. It might be a fill the gap where I have to just start a new video series on what I think the issues is and how I think that they could best be solved based on my own opinion that nobody asked for. So yeah, but I hope that he does return, and I hope that I get to share that conversation with you all, because I think it's an important conversation to have, especially now. I hope this happens, and I will get back to y'all. If not, then we're gonna fill this gap in together, period. All right, so I'll see you soon. So everybody, it is a Friday. Unfortunately, I gave them a week to get back to me, around a week, 5 days. I gave them until the end of the business week to get back to me, and unfortunately they did not. But fortunately, instead of me doing this filling in the gap alone, I do have a very special guest. He's a longtime friend of mine. He is one of the most intelligent people, young people that I have had the pleasure of meeting, and his name is Damarcus, and I will actually be calling him via Zoom pretty soon, like in about 2 minutes. So I'll be recording that conversation, and let's get to it. Let's get ready to fill the gap. All right. So let's
Okay.
get into it. So did you hear about what happened in Bakersfield with like the guy running over the pedestrian?
Yes, I did. I did hear about it. I saw a couple of videos like of the guy being pretty much protected by the police officer
Yeah.
after running over said person, and it's laughable in the sense of, it's laughable because, like this person literally killed someone and he's being protected by police, and have you seen the videos of like KKK members going out and protesting stuff, and like they're being literally protected by police officers, but when we go out and peacefully protest, it's a completely different story. So
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, so my whole thing is like, how do we move forward from here? So usually what I would do is talk to the police chief and then try to find out ways we can bridge the community together, right?
mm-hmm.
But
Exactly.
I can't do that, obviously. And before filling in the gap for myself, I wanted to like get your opinion, because I know that we had like a phone call like last week or a couple weeks ago about everything that's going on and how it's affecting us as Black people, and you especially as a Black man.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to know, like, what has your experience being in Bakersfield been like?
So okay. I would say Bakersfield is predominantly, it's divided up into, I would say, 5 areas. You have northern Bakersfield, which is the Oildale area, which is technically a different city, but I consider it part of Bakersfield.
Yeah.
And it's predominantly white, really prejudiced. You do have some Hispanic and Black people out there, but it's a really prejudiced part of town. You have the east side of Bakersfield, which is, old money is the way that I like to put it. Like that used to be the rich side of town, but it kind of, as time went on, it grew into one of the poorer sides of town.
Yeah.
You have South Bakersfield, which is mostly poor as well, with like kind of like some of the like southeast part being like the boonies, countryside. Agricultural stuff is out there.
Yeah.
You have the west side of Bakersfield, which is a mix. The beginning of the west side is kind of poor, but then the further west you get is, much more money. We have Seven Oaks, we have mansions. It's really crazy. But I guess from my experience, so growing up, I grew up right by the bridge that takes you over to Oildale. Okay. And so I lived in an apartment complex. It's one of those things, like we had, our sewers would back up. So we'd have sewer water sometimes running on the sidewalks by the apartment. Police, like helicopters and stuff circled the apartments. Wasn't the best place to grow up, but at the same time, I was being raised by my grandmother, and we didn't associate, like she was like, you might be raised in the situation, but you don't have to be a part of it.
Yeah.
I would say like it wasn't the worst experience, but it is one of those things, like kind of how we've talked about before, being Black and being an educated Black person in Bakersfield. I would say I've caught a lot of stuff from other Black people, which was odd at times, but as I've gotten older, it's one of those things that it's like, you, as my friend kind of said, like a lot of people don't know what to do when they see someone who is educated and Black. Like they don't know really how to respond to that, you know what I mean? Because they expect you to act one way. And of course, like I listen to rap, I love sports, I love all that, but I prefer, I guess, the finer things in life is what I would say.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting to, hear some of those little statements, like telling someone you want to go be a doctor or go into the science field, and they kind of like, the way that they kind of like word their statements, like, oh, really? Like kind of, not jokingly, but like, we'll see if that really happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even the way that I speak, like people are like, wow, you sound really, wow, you talk so well. And it's like, would you be saying this to a little white kid? You know what I mean? Yeah. It's just those little things, like looking back on it and thinking about it, it's like, dang, like they're pretty much saying, wow, you talk well for a Black kid. You know what I mean? And, but yeah. Once again, it wasn't the worst experience growing up here. It is, as I've told you, extremely conservative. And that also kind of plays a role in some of these things as well, I would say, to an extent. But yeah, once again, it's totally different than my experience coming to San Francisco and it being much more diverse, you know what I mean? As a community of people. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that for us. I think like I kind of got that from you. You know, we're on whatever organization, because I don't want this video to get flagged
Yeah, that.
and our school to come after us. But we're a part of an organization where
Yeah.
we're a part of a diverse group of people who make some
Yes,
decisions
exactly.
on daily life. So I've always noticed that the other person that we'll just call them A, and you know, us as Black folks on this organization, it's so hard not to say the name. Honestly, I'm like,
Yeah, it is. It is.
tiptoeing, but like I've noticed that like you're like more conservative, and I was wondering like if that was a part of or influenced by like where you grew up. I know it's conservative, but then like you just said, you have this mix of, you have the Black people not expecting much of you, kind of.
I would say like, well, I'll give you like to put into perspective, like I would say it's more for a lot of the Black people in the community. Seeing someone like me, I think to them it might have been kind of how you said, maybe like a not a slap in the face, but it's like you're going against this sort of way that we live. You know what I mean? Like this lifestyle that we kind of live. You know what I mean? And I think for them, I wouldn't say that it was intimidated, but I think it was more of like that's what white kids do. Like white kids are the ones that want to be doctors. They're the ones that want to have these really high aspirations.
Yeah.
And you know, so for me growing up, you know, for me it was really hard trying to connect to being a Black man. Like I would say most of the time I identified more as Hispanic or Mexican because I am mixed. And as I got older, even with that, like I realized how that community doesn't really like people that are Black and Mexican mixed. You know what, like it's just how it is. You know what I mean? I would say that, but you know, like as I got older, I choose to identify as a Black man, and I do that more after reading Black literature. You know, just watching the movies that I do because like I'm inspired by people like Langston Hughes, Richard Wright, Ralph Ellison, like their literature, because it shows that there's so much more to being Black than what you would consider the modern day Black person. You know what I mean? Like more than rap, more than all of that. And a statement that a friend of mine, her mom said, she was like, you know, being Black isn't just, there's not one correct way to be Black. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There are multiple ways, and like we all make up this spectrum of Black people. But going back to your question, I actually would say that going to high school, I would consider myself much more, I thought I was much more liberal than I actually am, that I've come to kind of terms with now. But I think it's I'm a lot more liberal for someone who lives in Bakersfield. You know what I mean? Compared to someone who lives in San Francisco. Like I do hold on to some tendencies from here, but at the same time, like I would say that I am still much more progressive than a lot of people here. And in this terms of, you know, I feel like nothing, like from like what I've heard, like nothing has really changed here. You know what I mean? It just stays the same, you know, and it's saddening, but I mean, yeah, it was kind of like a crazy experience though, being a liberal in San Francisco compared to being someone who identified or thought they were liberal in Bakersfield.
We felt like it was important to be your Black allies because you had expressed to us that that wasn't something that you had growing up a lot. So it was really important to us to show you that, yeah, we're academics and yeah, we accept you as you are. And especially for me, because I grew up with the same thing. Like I'm from Vacaville, like they are super, like coming back here, it's like all yeehaw trucks, and I'm like, oh my god, it's been a culture shock. But I'm so grateful for being in San Francisco and learning all the things that I did learn there. Have you ever, like, I know you said that there were helicopters and police kind of lurking around. Have you ever witnessed, experienced, or heard of any kind of weird like harassment or police brutality in Bakersfield?
Honestly, the most recent thing that I heard, and it was an old video actually that resurfaced of I think it was like the sheriff, like one of the sheriff guys here, I think his name is Donnie Youngblood. A video of him pretty much saying that it's cheaper for them pretty much to shoot to kill someone instead of shooting them and wounding them. because they pay more out of pocket for medical expenses than they pay to pretty much just pay the family off. I have never seen anything personally. I mean, I have uncles that have been, one of them who has been arrested a lot of times, and my grandmother, you know, because of all the things that are happening with black men being shot by police officers, he was arrested once, and it sounded as if it was kind of escalating to a point because he is a runner. I'll put it that way. He's one of those people that'll run away. You know what I mean? And my grandma was scared that her son was going to be shot and killed in front of her. Yeah. You know what I mean? But I've never firsthand seen anything that I can remember at the moment. You know what I mean? I mean, once again, even with family, there's only one or two relatives that really ever gets in trouble with law enforcement. But you know, from what it seemed, you know, growing up here, I would say that it would be safe to assume that some of them carry some prejudicenesses with them. I mean, but a part of me likes to believe that not all of them are like that. My pastor from Arvin, his son is black, and he's a police officer. He's one of the very few police officers that is black in our, you know, police here. And I can't even imagine what this is like for him right now. You know what I mean? Being a black police officer on the force who, you know, was raised being black, you know, in a black man, and it's just crazy sometimes. But yeah, I can't really recall anything personally that I can remember off the top of my head.
Yeah. My main focus is I went on the Bakersfield Police Department website. And I noticed that they have a lot of programs like Neighborhood Watch, like Get Involved, like basically 1-800-SNITCH. But they don't have a program, from what I saw, where police connects with the community. So have you ever, I know it's kind of a big area, but have you ever been involved, or have you ever seen anything where the police directly connects with the community?
I feel like in high school they might have had events, you know what I mean, where it's and I think a lot of the way that they get involved with the community is through those sports things. You know how they'll have the sports programs for police officers and the fire department and stuff. I think that's the kind of things that they get involved with.
Yeah. I think that would definitely help the community, because right now, especially with tensions, what you don't want to do is make a Facebook Live video. The police chief did that. He made a Facebook Live video explaining why what happened was an accident and why this person may or may not be charged, or just clearing up the misinformation online, which is cool. But it's at the same time, in my opinion, you have to connect with your community. You can't just do it via Facebook Live. And I know we're in COVID right now, we're in quarantine, but I think one of the good ways to do that is not to just go out to the news stations and your own platform, but to connect with people like us who aren't a part of the majority race or demographic in Bakersfield, and really tell us that, you know, you're on our side. So I think that's been something that I was thinking of, you know?
But I would kind of say that to an extent, I would argue that the majority of them here aren't. I mean, we have the day that we had one of our big protests here for the Black Lives Matter movement, there was an All Lives Matter movement too, that same day. And it's it's crazy to me, because it's you know, once again, a majority, because of where I live, I would say that it's okay to somewhat assume that the majority of officers are also conservative, you know what I mean? Also, you know, have this one-dimensional sort of take on things. I agree with you. That's something that I've kind of talked about with my grandmother, because a long time ago when I was younger, I was thinking of being either a lawyer or in law enforcement as an officer, and I was kind of discouraged by my relatives to not do that, because when you're black, you don't work in those types of fields, is something that I think along the lines of what they said. But I do agree that I personally think having more officers of color, black officers potentially, would help bridge this gap.
Yeah.
And I think, once again, the only way that we kind of get rid of this stigmatism as well is police officers, our police officers have to do a better job of well, not shooting and killing people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like really, because I think once again, if we could if we can bridge this gap between minorities and police officers, because once again, like I would love to live in a world where I didn't feel like I couldn't trust the law enforcement or the people that were there or meant to protect me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of the sad, like kind of like what my girlfriend's mother was kind of saying, because we had a discussion about the George Floyd killing as well. And I was like, well, I don't have the privilege really to feel the same way you do about police officers. Like, you know, I fear because of my size, because of, you know, like I'm a pretty big person, like I might get shot and killed. You know what I mean? Because I'm scared of being shot and killed, the officers are going to react some type of way and I might get killed, or one of my siblings, you know, like that's just the sad reality of it. But I do think like that it would be nice to have these programs, and not just, the thing is, I feel what makes these programs kind of iffy is I feel like it can be seen as a way to save face. You know what I mean? Like, let's go do some outreach thing with the community. And it's more of a ploy to get rid of this negative image and not really showing that there's a change. You know what I mean? Because think about it, like people meet and like politicians have like rallies and like things like that to like speak to their constituents or speak to people that are going to vote for them. But how many times do they really ever express their, like what they're going to do or how they're going to change it, instead of just giving flowery language to appease, you know what I mean?
3 bullet points. If you could just say 3 different things that you think would help Bakersfield PD do a good job, what do you think it would be?
Okay, I would say the 3 things, well, put me on the spot here. I would say adding more. First off, I think people need longer training as police officers. I really do. I do not think that it's like, isn't like a 14-week training or something like really, really small like that. I do not think that is enough time to properly be trained to handle de-escalation. I really don't. I think that we need longer training periods to become an officer. I think we need more officers than just white officers. We need Black officers, Mexican officers, like more minorities need to be included in our police force. I do believe that. And I would say lastly, I mean, I don't know. It's really hard to say. I mean, I really can't think of a third point. Those are the 2 big ones that I would give, though, just those 2. But I guess more outreach with the community, too, is like something that you were saying, more outreach. And, you know, actually going to these poorer sides of town, being there with the community, you know what I mean? Not just having these, like if we were to do something like you are proposing, not having it on the west side of town that's rich, maybe taking it to the Robo Bank, which is our big, you know, thing here where events are held, maybe doing it somewhere like that where it's in the middle of downtown, it's accessible to everyone, you know what I mean? So, you know, we can all be on this equal standing, I would say, in my opinion, you know what I mean? That would be something that I would say, have those forums and things like that where the community can come and speak, and we can actually try to get some sort of change done here. It's really interesting to me because once again, when you think of like one of the most liberal states in America, you think of California. And it's funny how I would say San Francisco, in my opinion, makes up the most of that. Because like Central California is mostly agriculture. It's not, you know, I would say San Francisco and LA are the 2 most liberal cities in California. Maybe a couple of other ones. But like, it's not, I wouldn't say the majority of them are like, it's just really odd, you know, once again, coming back here and seeing people with Second Amendment stuff, vote Trump 2020, it's weird.
It's very weird. It's a weird time.
It's a weird time. Yeah, it's a weird time.
All right, Damarcus. I love you so much. Thank you so much for doing this. Like, I appreciate you so much. Damarcus brought up some really good points, right? He said that we need to diversify the police force, which that is the number one thing that I feel like I probably missed in my own argument. I'm all about programs, communities, outreach, all that. But honestly, a lot of change starts from within. So if we could get more of those marginalized groups to speak up for their communities and have an equal voice all across the board, I think that it would really help. What I'm going to add to his argument, how do we fill in this gap? Number 1, I'm going to have my 3 bullet points. Number 1, right? Chief of police in Bakersfield needs to get in touch with not necessarily me, but people like me. As I mentioned in our little chat, you can't just post on Facebook. You can't just talk to major news outlets. And I say that because you have the advantage of being on your own platform and monitoring the comments that come in and out. You have the advantage there. You have the advantage with prepping for the news. You have the advantage of which news companies you'd like to talk to, or which news broadcasters, i.e. the more conservative Fox News, or if you're going to go with someone local, if you're going to go with, all different types of things that you have control over. When you talk to someone like me, you don't have control over what I'm going to ask you in the moment. You don't have control over your image if it's not genuine. So I would encourage that the Bakersfield Police Department, especially the chief, reaches out to people like me who are underrepresented, who don't have a large voice, to show that they really truly care about their community and truly care about what people think. So for me, I'm not trying to be the messiah for anybody. And I'm not saying that I have to be the representative. But what I'm saying is, if you're more inclined to talk to someone like me on behalf of your community, I'm here. Because your community, the person who passed away from being ran over and whose story is not being told broad enough, I don't care if it was a manslaughter situation, if it was an accident. If you truly feel that way, the people who are outraged by it, past Bakersfield County, need to be able to feel as though you hear them. Not trying to rebut anything that happened, not trying to cover your own tracks, but directly addressing the regret and the sorrow that you have for a human life that has passed away. If I'm asking you for a chance to address your community, not your Facebook community, not your right-wing conservative community, but your community who is hurting right now, and the communities past that who are hurting right now because of this incident, you should talk to me. And that's on period. Like that's what it is. Talk to your community. Take accountability for how your police officers guarded someone who was a suspect. Because before you reviewed the tapes, he was a suspect. When Black people are walking down the street, minding their own business, they're not guarded by the police. They're martyred by the police. Number 2, you need to start developing these programs. These programs are essential. Damarcus and I talked about it. If your outreach extends to sports, from what I'm told, from what he understands, this is not 100% fact checkable just yet, but if you go on your website, you have nothing about bridging between communities. You need to outreach with your community. It's important that they hear you. It's important that they see you, and not just your conservative community. Your community that needs uprising and liberation, which means that you have to be able to show up and help these people and know these people and reach out to these people and create things for these people. You have the best job in the world if you would just realize that it doesn't have to be a stressful situation. If you could open your heart to all the beauty that I'm sure is in Bakersfield. I've stopped by there through going to LA at the McDonald's, and it was a lot of yeehaw stuff going on, but there's a lot of land, and I'm sure there's a lot of fun activities that happen in Bakersfield. I'm sure Bakersfield is popping to some degree. Lastly, I would second the training. You can't wait for the next president or our governor, Gavin Newsom, to create laws. You have to be the champions in creating your program. You have to understand how systemic racism affects how a black suspect and a white suspect are represented, and how black outrage, how minority outcries, period, are handled versus how white outcries are heard and handled. There's a factor in it. And as Damarcus points out, there are very many officers of color in the world. But they are still subjected to this training, this visual training of what a suspect looks like. When you lower a person down to their qualities, even though every person is different, when you try to group a bunch of qualities and attach it to people, what do you end up doing is discriminating. What you end up doing is discriminating against a group of people. In Damarcus's story, how black folks, some black folks and some minority folks in Bakersfield feel about their success, but particularly black folks. You can see how they feel about where they're going in life. You can see that there's a clear line between who has opportunities and who doesn't. I need you, Bakersfield Police Department, to uplift those communities. Okay? I need you to believe in these communities. I need you to support these communities. And I need you to do it from your heart. And if you're not going to do it from your heart, we're going to have to take you to the ballot and vote you out. But I would rather you see the humanity and the pressing issues that are systemic racism in law enforcement. I want you to take a look at what you're doing and ask if you're doing enough. All right, guys, that was our first episode of Filling in the Gap. This is probably gonna be my favorite series because I like, little detective work. It was really awesome to do this, especially with my close friend, one of my best friends in San Francisco. This was originally supposed to be a Bridging the Gap, but I'm so happy that it turned into a Filling in the Gap because I really got to have an uncensored view of what it's like being in Bakersfield, a part of the community, rather than, the kind of like oppressor, oppressed dynamic that Bridging the Gap can have. I want you to stay tuned because we are going to be having new content. I am thinking of the month of June. A lot of Black Lives Matter things have been taking the front seat because it is important. But I have not forgotten about my queer community. So I do have some things that are in the works for the queer community. So please turn on your notifications. And thank you for joining me for another episode. Stay well. Thanks. Bye, y'all.